What's going on, guys? Welcome. Today we talk about a fragrance from the house of Jovoy, which features a heavy dose of incense. So are we going to be in the church or out in the streets with this one? Grab your drinks, strap up, and let's go for that ride.
Okay, dinner for two. I watch that head move side to side as I let this in into the room. You were on time, let's connect minds. Trying to get into a mood. We gon' be fine. Close up the blinds, no rush. Finish the food.
All right. Welcome to the Scent Bubble. I am your host for the afternoon. If you're new to the channel, I drop videos every single day related to fragrance. I am on a massive fragrance journey, and I simply put a camera to it and try to be as resourceful as possible with the tricks, tips, and evaluations I have of the various fragrances I come across. And at this point in my office, I have probably about 500 scents at least, and about 200-300 bottles. So I do this all day, every day. Today from the house of Jovoy, we have La Liturgie des Heures. Hopefully I'm not botching that. We'll put it in the title for you guys so all you French folk can pronounce and know what the correct saying is of that. But for lack of better words, anyways, we're dealing with, I think, an incensey fragrance. That's what I've heard of it. I'm not sure much else. This is truly an initial impressions, but we're going to break it down and see what we can walk away with. I love the house of Jovoy. Every fragrance they make is very transportive. I wouldn't say transportive on a level like maybe Imaginary Authors or Etat Libre d'Orange, but I feel like this house is more tasteful. Even though their scents, even their more, I don't know, challenging scents, I feel are more tasteful and feel like fragrances. Whereas Etat Libre d'Orange and Imaginary Authors sometimes feels like they make sense for the air, for lack of better description. These, even on ones that are different or unique or more challenging, I still feel like, no, this is a fragrance. And so we're going to check this one out today. In the air, initial thoughts, I get a load of incense, I'm not going to put this on my hand because I think we'll be able to break this down just fine. And we'll see if it has any level of transition on the strip. So to evaluate if I need to put it on skin. But nonetheless, heavy dose of incense. It's very dry. It's very clean incense. It doesn't feel, it feels weighty while being light. You know, sometimes with a weight, you feel a sense of dampness or moisture or even just like thickness. This feels very clean, very dry, but not light. It's only light in terms of how I would imagine an incense feeling, which is very thick and resinous and musty. This doesn't have that. It's very clean cut, similar to something like a Bentley Absolute level of incense, where it's more presentable, it's more dressed up, it's more modernized. Definitely get the ancient kind of resinous, embery feel of like an old cathedral or something like that, but in the most clean, most presentable way, you know, church in 2025 type of thing, where you might be going into an old church that's ancient, but you can tell it's very well kept, it's very pristine, and it's treated as such. As it dries down, I'm starting to get an airiness with this, and I'm actually going to apply it on skin because I want to see if there's any level of like transition in terms of how it feels, because this feels very, very clean and very dry on the dry down here. Distinctly outside of the incense vibe, it doesn't feel like multiple incense, just like one particular incense. I don't know why I feel like saying that. I guess I just don't want you to get the vibe that there's like a lot of different smells. It's a very straightforward scent. I'm going to let it dry on my arm for a second. Only other qualities to this is, again, most of it is incense. It's clean, it's dressed up. I don't know if professional is the right word as much as it's just pristine, classy. I get amber, loads of amber. So it's warm, it's slightly sweet in the most savory way possible, like a 2 out of 10 sweet, a mineralic, a resinous, a fiery sweet. Extremely woody, obviously, from incense. Almost feels resinous or balsamic, but in the driest, cleanest way possible. And that's pretty much it. A little bit of spice in the background. It's just clean, modern incense that reminds you of the past, so to speak. On the skin, it's really no different. I feel more of the balsamic, resinous, ambery nature of it come forth. But again, it's clothed in such a cleanly, dry, crisp airiness way that I feel like out of all of the incensey fragrances I've come across, this is the most well dressed up, where it won't make you feel ancient. It won't make you feel Middle Eastern. It won't make you feel past. You know, it's a very present rendering of incense, which I actually love. You know, anytime you can kind of bridge the gap between ideas and make something still feel timeless and also new in a way, that's a great thing. You know, you're evolving a scent. It wears quite light. I don't imagine something like this would have a projection outside of like 2 feet. Due to the fact that it's incense, I think you're going to have at least moderate longevity. Let's go ahead and check out our screen here. Liturgie of the Hours evokes the image of an old monastery where the scent of burning incense fills the air, just like the chanting of daily prayers. Okay, I get that vibe, totally. Now let's look up the makeup of this. Cypress, totally get that. So cypress and green, in the most airy way possible. This isn't like a Eau Sauvage or a Lalique Linsumi level of greenery in cypress, where it's like very lush green, plush, projective. This is somewhat softer. The incense and the resins and, the musk. Okay, so the musk is what's kind of earthing out and duffing an airiness into this. Like, I almost feel like musk a lot of times breathes oxygen into a fragrance, where sometimes it breathes oxygen in a way where you smell something to be more earthy. It grounds a fragrance, but in a lot of ways, musk, I think, just kind of provides this airy life into a fragrance. And that's what I get here. It's just kind of gluing everything together and providing oxygen to the fragrance so that it wears very modern, very like contemporary. Middle notes, we have incense, olivana, myrrh, and French labdanum, so some synthetics and resins and incense, and then that base note of musk. And I think because the base note is so singular, that's why it dries down so light. Let's look at the, so as far as the longevity and projection and sillage, it's very light, so moderate to light. It does say it's moderately long-lasting. I imagine you'd get 3-4 strong hours on this, probably having to spray somewhat heavy in like the 6 to 8 hour or 6 to 8 spray range minimum, to be quite honest. And yeah, let's see the rating of this fragrance as of today. So right here is what I'm looking at. 4 out of 5. I always tell you guys, if a fragrance gets a minimum of a 4.0 out of 5, it's worth considering. I've rarely ever seen a fragrance 3.9 and below that interests me at all. That's just my journey so far. So 4.0 is typically like, you should consider this. It may be something you really like. And then like 4.2, 4.1, 4.2 out of 5 and up feels like something where it's a little more mass appealing. This has 1,100 votes, so it's definitely, a lot of people have put their nose on it, but it's definitely seems like more of a, I don't know if niche is the word, more of a particular type of individual would enjoy this. And I can see that due to the incense, but even just as a fragrance. Okay, let's go to some usual suspects for this and wrap it up. So I get super upscale casual, semi-formal, and formal for this. You can dress it down to upscale casual. Definitely feels like a colder weather scent, but it's so light and airy. I think if it's very hot weather, you can really only make a case for it indoors or like at night, you know? Occasions, man, this could be literally anything. It could be for an older gentleman. It could be an errand runner. It could even be like a vibe for gentleman, older man's date night. You know, you're going to be in a restaurant where there might be a fire or like some musicians or something like that. This would set a vibe, set a tone. as like a clean, super masculine gentleman scent. You know, I always feel like in the date night setting, when you're with somebody and you're established, you have a significant other, you have a spouse, you can play more with going more heavy masculine as a scent profile and not always resort to sweet and spicy and alluring. You don't have to always be heavy sweet. Whereas I feel like, you know, if you're courting or you're taking someone out on a date for the first time and it's the first couple go rounds, you typically tend to have to go with your like notorious stunning fragrances, which are typically, you know, somewhat spiced, either holiday spiced or gentlemanly spiced, sweet, dark and plays on dark and sweet, or even fresh sweet if it's like a daytime date. But this certainly can go into the date night realm for older gentlemen. You know, upscale, semi-formal occasions, formal occasions. You could even wear something like this to a funeral. I could see that being a vibe in the most fragrance way possible. I know that sounds crazy. Yeah, so we talked about performance a little bit. I think this fragrance is 30 and up. For my 20-year-olds out there who want a very classy scent, like if things like incense and vetiver and dry woods and, you know, cypress, pine, papyrus, resins, myrrh, frankincense, elemi, if any of those type of scents you're aware of and like to go into that bag, this is a great fragrance. I'm calling it in its category like it feels very much like a 9 out of 10 for me. In its category, not overall. I'm judging it within the context of what kind of fragrance it is because I'm comparing it to fragrances before it and saying where I think it sits in the spectrum. Again, it's very reminiscent of Bentley Absolute. So for all my people who can't afford a fragrance like this, which probably is going to run you at the very cheapest 120-ish bucks all the way up to 200, you can go down to something like Bentley Absolute, which is only going to run you like 20 bucks and it's going to get you right here. But I think there is a refinement and a little more complexity that's justified with the up price here. But I need to speak on the alternatives because I think Bentley Absolute would totally do the job here. But this is a nice scent. For people who are into stuff in this wheelhouse, I think this is a must-have just because it's the most clean, modern rendering of this scent profile that I think I've come across in a while. It's not too churchy, you know. It's not too historic of a scent. I love the airiness in it. I think that's how this scent should be worn. You know, if you're smelling an incense in the air, either for religious purposes or because you like to throw incense in your house and that makes you feel good or like a vibe, density and dampness and thickness of the air is fine. But I think as a fragrance and as a scent, you need that breath of airiness through it to lighten it up a bit. Sprays, I told you, I do think this is like a 6 to 8 spray minimum because of the airiness. Otherwise, you know, going 3 to 4 sprays on something like this, it's going to be great for like an hour or two, and then it's going to be virtually non-existent by the end of the day. Again, ambitious 20-year-olds, but 30 and up for sure. You have to be into this type of thing. We talked about alternatives. Another alternative would be something like Lalique's Encre Noire à l'Extrême. I think that fragrance is a lot warmer and a lot woodier and less incensey. But in the incense direction, I think Bentley Absolute could almost be called like a 85%, 90% clone of this. And so there's a designer for you. But Encre Noire à l'Extrême will run you about 20, 30 bucks as well. So those are two great alternatives to this style. But if you have the money, this is tasteful. Okay, I think I've cleared that up, man. 9 out of 10 for me in terms of its category. Context matters here. You know, I can't say what this would be with the masses because it's not a mass appealing scent profile. That's apparent by the fact that there's only 1,100 votes in the world on this fragrance. More people have it. It's just people who felt like voting and speaking about it and rating it. There's not that many in terms of the context of the globe. But anyways, this was Jovoy's La Liturgie des Heures. I know I'm botching that. And I gave it a 9 out of 10. Okay. Like, comment, and subscribe. More importantly, turn on that notification bell so you can stay in tune with all the latest and greatest. I drop episodes every single day. We bring entertainment, cinematography, obviously the usual with game shows, collabs, reviews, hot takes, everything related to fragrance. I'm approaching 700 videos at the recording of this video, and so we have a absolute TV guide video vault of content for you to digest, and I really go out of my way to make sure that the ladies, the men, the boys, the girls, everything in between have fragrances of all price points that you can tap into and learn about. So I am the Scent Bubble. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your week, and until next time, peace.